What I'm hoping to do today is break our topic into 4 major sections. First, we're going to look at who Mannheim is and just build a little bit of credibility about the company and give you some understanding where we're coming from when I use some of my references here. Then we're going to talk about our TDM path, what our journey's been like, and some of the major milestones along the way. We're also going to look at what we're using for our kind of TDM recipe for success right now. That's the main idea of our compare, create, then clone. And we'll end with the ROI. If there is some time at the end, we'll definitely use it to do some questions as well. If there isn't time afterwards, please use any of the sources available. Either talk to me afterwards, find me on LinkedIn, or just get an email address so we can keep these conversations going. Main goal here, though, is that I want to give you guys who are considering this tool the knowledge that you need to be able to implement it, to avoid any of the major pitfalls along the way, and some of the facts and figures to be able to bring back to your company to help that conversation along the way. Out of curiosity, who is currently utilizing TDM? Love my Cerner crew. Awesome, okay, and then the rest have some general interest in it, so hopefully we can get there. This one reminds me of the FBI warning that no one actually reads, so we're just gonna keep moving. Okay, so who is Mannheim? Mannheim, we started in 1945. We are a vehicle auction company. It's literally exactly what you're thinking of. A vehicle runs down the lane, there's an auctioneer talking really fast, and they sell it to the highest bidder. Being that we started in 1945, you can imagine some of our technology from back then was very primitive. We're still using some of it today, and luckily you'll understand why TDM has helped to advance that needle a little bit. But we are the world's leading, let me read it properly to get our tagline right. We're the world's leading provider of vehicle remarketing services. We have over 18,000 employees. We have them at 125 different locations in 11 different countries. We register about 8 million vehicles on a yearly basis. If you've ever traded in a vehicle or purchased one, chances are it actually has come through our auctions. So we really do touch a lot of people in that way. We facilitate $57 billion worth of value within this industry, and our numbers are about 2.6 billion yearly. Mannheim itself is part of Cox Automotive, which is a larger umbrella. That includes other companies, about 27 companies, I believe, right now. Some that you would have heard of are Kelley Blue Book or Otter Trader or Dealer Track. And Mannheim, like we said, is just the car division here. All right. So over the past few years, like I said, we've had a lot of transformations happening within my company. We've had both a legacy transformation, and we've also had an agile transformation for our teams. The legacy transformation is taking our I-Series systems, and that's still the main core of where we do our business processing at, and working on a better way to improve that, a better way to make a more event-driven architecture on top of it that can speed things up and handle the quickly changing marketplace. Our agile transformation has formed about 25 different capability teams that all have been empowered to be able to do whatever they want to make their products the best they can. And that's great because that brings a lot of morale, that brings a lot of productivity, but it also brings a lot of frustration for someone who's trying to help orchestrate the whole process. So I find myself working in every database that you can think of, the I-Series, the DB2s, of course, the Oracles, the SQL Server, MySQL, the NoSQL databases. We are working in eBiz, we're working in PeopleSoft, in Salesforce. We're all over the place, and that knowledge is what forced us to look at what our efforts have been currently or were around test data management and come to eventually the solution to CA. So before we had any kind of official test data management efforts, what we had was a lot of hands on keyboard doing a lot of slow processing. We had people that knew what they needed for their specific application testing, and they were trying to create that data themselves. But like I said, that's very slow, and a lot of times what happens is the people don't actually have the knowledge across the whole system to understand the data points of the people to their left and to their right. So you got a lot of bad data inside of the systems. Then, as we started doing some kind of test data efforts themselves, we had a lot of the teams doing automated efforts. They were using simple tool or standard tools in the industry at the time, like UFT, to be able to automate the green screen processes or any of the other applications they were using. But what happens there is you now find yourself testing the screens instead of creating your data because things change so often that everything was very fragile and it wasn't an efficient process. And then on an enterprise level, we were doing production refreshes. Production refreshes, a lot of people use it initially, and it's a great way to get up and run, but you have a lot of drawbacks on them. Typically they take a long time. Typically they're prone to errors. You're gonna see that you really run into an area of what you see is what you get, meaning whatever happened in production that week is your next week's test data. If there's not enough data in there, oh well. If you don't have the data for a new type of feature you're working on, good luck. So we didn't like to work on that kind of stuff. Instead, we started looking for things that could work for us in a different way. And that's when we were looking for something that was going to be fast and flexible. It had to be platform agnostic, obviously, for everything that we've been talking about so far. And then we had to focus on making our new event-driven architecture work for us in the model that we chose. So my biggest issue being around the test data is that I wanted there to be data integrity. When you're doing these production refreshes, and we had a chance to talk about this a little bit earlier, you take a database, and unless you're gonna snap the entire stack at once and everything that's happened along the way and the logs and everything, then you really have just broken records across the entire stack, and that's not a good place to be in at all for when you're trying to do a production-like environment. So that's where CA's TDM came in for us, and we saw the options that it had for both its data subset and data masking capabilities to be able to create a quick copy of any database, but then also its synthetic data creation process, which allowed us to be able to put any data anywhere at any time. And we can talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, of course. Before we do, though, talk about that in our process, I want to point out, right now, my team is 2 people. There's 25 capability teams, like I said, and we're doing a ton of work throughout all of it and doing enterprise solutioning with 2 people on the team. Do I suggest that? No. If you can get more people on your team, do it, please. But your model typically is this. You're going to start small. The way we started this engagement was we brought in some vendor partners that helped us get the initial process off the ground. I think there were 3 of them that came on. We had our 1 full-time employee at the moment. We had a testing advisor that spent half of his time with us, and we had one of our I-Series gurus that spent half of his time with us. And that was not an easy effort. There was probably about a year work of solid work, truly mapping out our systems, understanding the code, figuring out how our best ways to replicate that without actually using all the system tools. It was a lot of hard work, but once that was up, we had a very mature model that 2 people have been able to continue to improve upon, continue to engage more and more of the teams and come up with newer solutions all the time, because it's a beautiful, stable system, and CA is a wonderful partner to work with on that kind of thing. So let's talk a little bit about the process that we're following right now, okay? I'm not gonna deep dive into any of this too much, so again, please reach out for any of this that you have further questions on after the fact. Our first step is the comparison process, okay? And there's a couple tools built into the suite that really help with that. Test data visualization is one of them. What test data visualization will do for us is it lets me compare what's in my database to specific points of the test suite itself. So I can look at all of my key metrics and I can compare that to the database and see, do I have all the data I need to be able to run with this set? That's a really cool thing to do because it's most effective if you work early on in the process, the card grooming process, the feature process with your teams, and it puts you as the TDM expert in a much more powerful position in the company to be able to work with them and be part of an integrated solution. The other side of it, though, is the DB compare process, and what you can do there is take 2 actual databases, apples to apples, and see what it is that you have in one, not the other. So specifically, your production versus your test environment. What am I missing here? One way that I really like that is you can see the anomalies that are happening. So with us using a lot of the I-Series systems, it meant that people were using them in very weird ways in the auctions because there aren't tons of rules stopping people from doing it. So certain fields they would use in an odd way at this one auction that none of the others had. And when we start rolling out new enterprise solutions on top of this to replace some of those, every time we got to a new auction, we got to new failures because we had no idea these teams were using it like that. So that gave us a chance to start comparing what was in that one specific auction to what we expected and what we were testing against, and found a lot more smooth roads once we started doing that process in the rollout. So then we're going to talk a little bit about the creation, and this I consider the cornerstone of our entire TDM effort and what probably makes CA's TDM solution stand out against most of its competition, okay? It really does this better than anything else out there that we found at the time. What we do here, through the creation process, is we have the ability to put any data anywhere. We have the ability to look at our tables and just, instead of masking it, bringing it in and changing it up, I can just immediately create it from the get-go, insert it into this, and now it's all fake data. So any of these teams out there that are worried about the auditors, or worried about PII or any of that kind of stuff, it's actually like the most fun thing in the world, because the auditor comes in and you say, oh no, it's all fake. No, everything's all fake. No, there's nothing from production in here at all. Don't worry about it. Green check mark me. Let's continue on with our lives. There's tons of different things that they have in the data painter is what they call it, in the creation process. They've built in functions that help you randomize things and help you generate unique data each time. They have seed lists that allow you to have structured lists that are all going to have intact data. You have ability to do dynamic database calls from inside of the tool so that you can confirm validity of your test target, and you can even call stored procedures and help utilize some of the processes that are happening on the back end right out of the tool. And then on top of that, you get to use this in conjunction with the test data on demand offerings from the tool, or in our case, we've had some of our own test data on demand offerings that we've created. And that's what's beautiful too, is that they've been building all of this in such a way that you can either use their entire stack and all the great solutions that go along with it, or you can tie it in with some of the things that might make more sense at this time with your own company. All right, that was a lot of information. So one quick side story. I was talking to my dad earlier today, and this is actually true. I was talking to my dad earlier today. I just did the comedian thing. This is true. I got on the FaceTime with him, and my dad is at that age now where his eyebrows go crazy, and we all work on him saying, Dad, you have to keep those trimmed up now. And we actually have him going to a barber. So I thought to myself, oh, I'm getting actually a little bit older too. And so I ran to the mirror. I was like, all right, maybe we'll trim these up again. And I got right here, and I got the razor on this one little edge right here. And that's when I realized that I had not done anything with the guard at all. And I was this close to having just one eyebrow when I came out here and did the presentation today. And that's harder on you guys than it is on me, because you would have spent the whole time looking at the guy with one eyebrow and trying to figure out what happened instead of actually looking at the presentation. So we all dodged a bullet there, but I mean, it was really that close. All right, we're back. Data cloning. This is a new feature that has come out with some of the most recent releases. It's called VTDM, or Virtual Test Data Manager. And what this is it's a really cool thing that allows you to really empower your testers. You take these huge data sets, these huge databases and schemas, and you make a copy of them, and then you shrink the size of that down to just a fraction of the original size, and you're able to then give a copy of that to every single tester that is looking for it. It's an amazing thing to be able to do, because what you're doing is you're empowering your testers to be able to do all sorts of stuff they wouldn't have been able to before. If they were working in a place where there was just one database for them to work on, even if it was just for their own team, which is not something that happens very often, okay? But if, say that was the case, they still have to worry about all the rest of the stuff going on with their team, okay? The development efforts, the testing efforts, the performance efforts. Now with something like this, every tester is able to have their own copy of a database, and they can do whatever they want to it. So not only are you getting all the best unit and functional testing possible, but you can do things like destructive testing, where you would have not thought about doing that before because you didn't have the time in your cycle to be able to get something done. This is a quick spin up and a quick burn down anytime you want to, and you can truly try to destroy your databases, which is something a lot of us don't have the luxury to do right now. So I encourage anyone to keep looking out for what's happening with the VTDM efforts here, because there's a lot of neat things that they're starting to do with this. And it's a great way to continue to maximize that idea of having a huge impact with a small team, okay? So we've talked a little bit about the process, and I think we've covered most of this at this point, but I want to hit on them specifically. One of the big factors that we look for in a current model today, or that we've done in a current model, is we've made sure that the scripts that we create are highly reusable. All of the scripts are first created inside of the tool, and then run from outside of the tool so that we have a lot of control over the variables that we use. That includes the target database itself. That includes all the different primary keys. That includes all the different dealers that we're working with, because that's going to be unique to each one of your targets, right? So this gives you a chance to be able to, every time you run it, create it specifically for this purpose. And that's been a big success. We do the on-demand, like I said, for us through an open source. We actually tie it in with Jenkins, and that works well because a lot of the pipelines that we currently use are in there, so the teams can actually call the jobs right from there, but still use CA's TDM to create all of the data. And they can either do that as a pre-population, they can do that as part of their scripts themselves. Whatever works best for our teams, we give them the flexibility to utilize our one solution in a variety of different ways. We have multiple servers that we run the application on, still just one repo, but that allows us to multi-thread and speed up the process constantly. We're currently in the process of moving into Rally from version 1, and I'm excited about that because we've talked a little bit about the API connections that TDM or that CA has been focusing on to be able to connect their tools on the back end, but so not only do you now have we have a lot of options and a lot of ways to connect test data groupings to the actual cards and all that, but then we can connect in different unique ways that we would never thought about before with all the other tools that are out there. And obviously we talked a little bit about the database cloning. That's now a possibility. That was not even a thought a year and a half ago. So really great stuff happening there. All right, guys, we're gonna move into the ROI portion. This is a kind of fun one. For most people who are considering this in the first place, I think I could probably just not have done any of the rest of this presentation. I could have put up these numbers and it would have done the job that CA is hoping that I do for me. But we're gonna run through it anyway, and we're gonna do it like this. 5,500, that's the total requests that we fulfilled this year. That means 5,500 times this year, a team has come to the two of us and said, hey, I need data. I need some kind of unique special data for my circumstance. And 5,500 times we've been able to say, no problem, we'll get that done for you and deliver on that. And that's a great number for such a small team. 650,000 is the total amount of records that we provision inside of those 5,500 requests. So sometimes it's just 1-2 records at a time, sometimes it's 100 records, sometimes it's 50,000 records so that our performance team can be able to do a new test that they hadn't had the data for in the first place. So again, empowering the people around you to be able to do things they wouldn't have been able otherwise if we didn't have a solution like this in place. And you can imagine when we talk about if you're really relying on production refreshes, how impossible that is to do great performance testing when you're also relying on production refreshes. That means that your performance team is getting in fights with your manual testers on a daily basis. 27,000 is hours, time to manually create that. If we were still doing this manually and putting hands on keyboards or working to keep those scripts up to date, it would have taken 27,000 hours worth of work time. That roughly translates to somewhere around 10 employees, 12 employees that are now working on something, on actually testing their features, developing their features, doing something to actually create more value for our customers instead of searching for test data the whole time. 550 hours is the time that it took by utilizing TDM to publish this out instead of using the other efforts. Now, if you guys are good at math, you're right, I did double dip just a little bit here, so I'll be honest on that one. I did not account for the hours of me working on TDM constantly. But still, 550 hours total for 650,000 records, that's not a terrible thing. $1.41 million is the cost if we tried to create that manually and all the employees that would have been involved in the process. $1.2 million is the amount of money that we saved. That's the number. That's the really cool number. Between that and the 27,000 to 550, it's not hard for me to justify why we have a TDM division at my company. And it's really easy for me to go through my yearly review because I just say, here, boss, I think we're good, right? And so right now I'm in a pretty secure spot, and it's all because of the CA and the TDM process that we've been able to implement. What I don't have on here, and I do want to give some credit to, is CA's support team, CA's development team, CA's all the processes along with it. They're great, and it's true. I've never created a ticket when I needed help with something, or when I thought I might have found a bug, or when I had a suggestion for an improvement that didn't get responded to within an hour. I have probably 7 voicemails on my phone right now for a ticket that I opened a week and a half ago and I forgot to close over and over again. They're awesome people to work with. They're innovative in what they're doing, and they're willing to not push their solution, but instead they want to hear you as a customer, what you're doing, and build their new solutions around that. So I do give a lot of credit to CA on that, and that's not something that I would typically say on some of the other partners that I've worked with in the past. So that's it, guys. That's the majority of my presentation today, and I'd love to open it up for any questions you guys might have at this point.